Welcome back to the Shared Practices podcast. I have with me here today a 2015 Midwestern grad who went and did an AEGD residency in the military, has just finished up, Dr. Richard Lowe. Oh, wait.
Thank you for introducing me on my show.
Well, Richard, show. I think we got to do that again. You always go first.
Okay. Welcome back to the Shared Practices podcast. It feels good to be back. How's it going, George?
It's going good. Way better now that you're here. You have been missed by me and probably everybody else listening. So it was really, really great to have you back.
Thanks, man. No, it's exciting. We've moved to Oklahoma. I'm done with my residency. Life is looking up right now. So, and you've got a lot going on, and that's kind of what we're going to talk about today.
Yeah, I'm in my first month of practice, and I'm excited.
When did you graduate? When did that all? Let me think. Was that May?
Yeah. So I'd like to. So I think this would be a great episode to actually talk about my acquisition in the way that I probably wanted to and should have started talking about it on the air the first time, but I couldn't. And so right now we're recording this in July. I graduated at the end of May. And this episode, when you're listening to it, it will be in August, at the beginning of August, and that's August 1st is when we officially close on our practice. Okay,
cool. How does it feel to actually be Dr. Hariri?
It's funny, that doesn't really, I don't know. I didn't really feel any different, or, I don't particularly enjoy being called that. But, I think it's just being a dentist in general. Was a much bigger transition than I had anticipated. The transition from, being a dental student to being a dentist. And I find myself thinking a lot of the time, it would be really nice to go into practice ownership already being comfortable as a dentist. I see that. I see why people recommend you do associateships now. Because I think it'd be really nice to just have the dentistry be kind of mindless while you are trying to figure everything else out.
No, and it's funny because we kind of glorify early ownership on the podcast, but it's good to hear from you that, like, no, it's human to want to have some clinical experience under your belt before you're also dealing with all of the practice ownership. Because it's like I remember second year at Midwestern, I felt like everything in Midwestern was you learn how to do one thing in preclinic and you finally get barely decent at it. And then you learn something else, and now you suck at that. And then you have to get decent at it, and then the next thing, and then you suck at that. So it's like a continuous process of sucking at everything. And as soon as you get like good enough, you move on to the next thing. And so like to be very early on in both ownership and clinical confidence with patients and being on your own, it's a lot of things. Not that you're sucking at all of those things. I'm just saying that it's a lot to not have everything figured out. It's nice to have one thing figured out and then to be able to move on to the next thing.
Yeah, I think that's what, in hindsight, would have been nice. I don't think I would do anything differently, but, I see now firsthand the benefit of an associateship pre-ownership because you can...
Okay, wait, I'm going to cut you off because we're supposed to go into your whole transition experience, but I have to ask, so... Yeah. What was like one thing, like one specific thing, like the first day or two that surprised you that was like harder than you thought it was going to be?
Oh, great question. So as probably everybody on the podcast can imagine, I have a lot of confidence and, I'm just a confident guy. I'm not one to not believe in myself. And I did not realize until I started practicing how much I relied on my confidence. And it's almost something that I've relied on to be, calm and, not panic. And there's been a few times clinically where I don't have the answer. Of course not. I'm a new dentist. But it took me a bit to figure out that I'm not going to have all the answers. I just thought that I'd graduate and I would know more than I do. You know what I mean? For some reason, I assumed I knew more than I do. And
was it like something you saw clinically and they're like, what's this, doc? And you're like, I don't know. Like what happened?
Okay, fine. I'm going to go into, so this was my like second or third day in practice. And man, I really feel like it would be really nice if I had some backstory on the actual situation I'm in. So can I kind of briefly describe where I'm at? And then fine. I can get into it. So we So we had negotiated. So I have contacted when I was a third year dental student, I contacted a practice that I felt very, very highly of. Its location. I have a whole thing on the podcast about how I went through that. I won't go back into it. And we met
basically the best practice ever for you and your wife.
Yeah, it was the best available practice owned by a dentist 55 and up in the West Valley. That was the way I looked at it, based on its location and visibility and whatnot. So nice. I contacted these people. Eventually I got a hold of them, and they're a husband and wife dentist team. So they're both dentists and they work in the practice together. And when we had reached out to them, it turns out that they were looking to retire at a similar timeline to we were, and we were looking to buy. And it ended up working out where because I saw Derek and his buddy Steve, who's going to be on the show pretty soon, go through the experience of being a new grad and an owner all by themselves in a brand new state, I felt like I needed to build in some safeties for myself so that, the process of new grad ownership is a little bit easier for me. And so from the day I met them, I was adamant. Two things. You were going to finance part of the deal because I knew that was the only way I was going to get funding. And you were going to stay on with me for at least a year. So that was nice. Like from the day I met them, those were certainties. And that way they would.
Was that hard? And just for our guests, or for our listeners, was that like a sticking point for them, or were they just willing on both of those points?
So it's funny because between our conversations with them, they were not sticking points at all. They liked us. We liked them. I think we convinced them that we were the right people for their practice. And so they were willing to do a lot of things to make us the eventual buyers, including those two contingencies. And but for their professional team, they were not a huge fan of the carry. I mean, that's understatement. They hated the idea of carrying the note, and they carried part of the note. But that was the only way it was going to get done, and I was very forward with them on that. And so there was a point in our negotiations where I pretty much had to, sacrifice losing the deal, putting my foot down, saying that's going to happen, and trusting that relationship that we had built to carry us through a few sticking points that we had in the negotiations. But yeah, I mean, that's going to happen. And I think the relationship you have with the seller is crucial because it got us through like 2 or 3 times where we went back and we said, this is it. This is all we're offering or else we're walking away. And, we got through 2 or 3 of those.
Nice. So if you hadn't had that, the fact that you had a relationship with them before all of the brokers and, legal parties and everything came into play really saved you.
Yeah, and no brokers, just lawyers. And I do want to say, I know I'm going on a bit, but Justin Weaver, he works with Rob Montgomery. He was my lawyer. Incredible. That guy is amazing.
Awesome.
Anybody who's looking for a lawyer, my goodness, that guy is incredible. And he was really instrumental to this whole thing. So without him, it definitely would not have been done. I can say that for sure. Anyway.
Okay, cool.
So part of our deal is, so the husband of the two has a bad back. And so he was so we are going to come into the practice and replace him. And his wife is going to stay on with us.
Wait, so it's a husband and wife team replacing a husband and wife team?
Yeah, that was part of the reason why they thought it was such a great fit. I felt like,
I don't know how I missed that. I didn't realize that they practiced together as well before you came in.
Yeah, well, I couldn't say that on air because then that limits the number of practices down to 3. You know what I mean?
Okay.
So I always had to be a bit ambiguous about that. But yeah, so they're husband and wife. We're husband and wife, and
awesome.
It's been kind of smooth in that way. So we practice with the wife, and it's funny because my mom's a dentist.
Right.
And my lead instructor at school was a female dentist about the same age as my mom. And this seller is a female dentist about the same age as my mom and my instructor. So I feel like I've kind of always had this female dentist in her mid to late 50s mentor in my career. Yeah. And so I don't know if that's
awesome.
That's of no significance whatsoever, but it just feels very familiar to me. Anyway.
It just feels right.
Yeah. So now the husband has a bad back, like I mentioned. And so when we were negotiating our deal, we pushed our closing date back to July 31st, August 1st.
What was it originally?
June 30th was going to be the original day. So we pushed it back a month, but what we were able to do is negotiate a month and a half employment period where we work in the practice as associates to give the husband immediate relief clinically, and then we would then take over on August 1st. Now,
so are both you and your wife working in the practice now? When did you guys start working?
Correct. We started working middle of June. So I've been in there almost a month now as we're recording this. as an associate. But I think it's just kind of it's a very interesting situation because I was hoping that everybody would know the full situation when we walked in, and I never anticipated a situation where I'm in the practice and nobody knows I'm buying it.
So what's the story that the assistants, because by the time this episode airs,
everyone will know. Yeah, exactly. So that's why I'm holding it off.
But what do they know right now? Like, what do they think?
It's funny because
you guys are just coming on as associates for the foreseeable future?
They know that we're coming on as associates and eventually we'll take over the practice, but nobody knows when. That's kind of what that's. And so, I have, a hygienist asked me if we're going to take the week of Christmas off. And it's like, I don't know. I feel like everyone knows more than they're supposed to know, but
but they're not allowed to know.
Yeah, but they're not allowed to know, and I'm not allowed to say anything legally.
We all have to play that, like.
Yeah, so I'm just excited for it to be over. I'm excited
to associate.
Yeah, so but they know it's different, and they know that they know more than they're supposed to know, but I don't know if they know the full. I don't know how much I know because I can't ask them. You know what I mean? So
Right. It's just a very awkward balance.
Yeah, but it's been great for us because we've gone in there and we've really got to know the staff and really formed great relationships with them, and used a lot of that like initial time of the acquisition where you're not supposed to do anything to just get to know, like, and trust the staff and have them know, like, and trust you. So we're doing a lot of that now, which I like, as opposed to just sitting here waiting to do something. I'm happy that we got this opportunity to get in early, but. Nonetheless,
how big is the team? Is it
6?
Because it's a husband and wife team. Okay,
so 2 hygienists, 2 assistants, and 2 front desk.
Nice. That seems like a small team for a 2-doc practice.
Yeah, they are a bit understaffed.
Okay,
and they've just always been a very low overhead. Just those kinds of more conservative financially, and ownership people.
Sure,
that's just kind of their style. So anyway. Back to my story clinically. So now I'm an associate in this practice, and I have the senior doc. I don't want to call her senior doc, but the seller is with me. And so anyway, I have this appointment, and it's a PFM crown number 31. I'm taking it off. It was a lot of lingual decay. And one thing, the seller's been great. Like, she'll give me a lot of stuff, and she's let us do every single hygiene exam for the first 30 days just so we can meet everybody, as many people as possible. She's been very generous with us and like wanting us to succeed. And you don't hear about that too often. So this was a case where she went into an exam. She diagnosed a crown that needs to be replaced, and then she put it on my schedule so I would do it. So I haven't seen this patient before. I get in there and I can't take off the crown. And so I'm I don't want to get too clinical, but I'm all the way through the metal. So that's like kind of the only reason why I wouldn't be able to get through it. And it's not coming off, and their crown splitter I've never used before.
I was going to say, what is it? Is it a different crown splitter than you're used to?
It's like a periosteo elevator that's blunted at the end. So it's really weird. I'm pretty sure it is a periosteo elevator that's blunted at the end because that's what the other seller, the husband, used to extract teeth, and so we got like a bunch of them that are like used, and I think they just, I don't know. Anyway, so it's
the crown splitters, quote unquote.
Yeah. So anyway, it's this crown splitter, and I've never used it before. It's not coming off. And I'm panicking. And so then I go into her office, and I'm like, our office. And I told her, I can't take off the crown. And, for somebody who, relies on their confidence and's taken off, not hundreds of PFMs, but I've taken off a lot of PFMs.
Sure.
I've never encountered this before. And my first one in practice, I'm encountering this. And so immediately I panic. And so I go in there and I'm like, I can't take it off. And she's like, okay, well, are you all the way through the metal? I'm like, yeah. And then she's like, okay, well, and then she gave me a few pointers on what to try. And so I go back in, I try it. It's not coming off. And so then she comes in and, we already talked about if I can't take it off, she was done for the day. And so she was going to leave. And I told her to stick around until I get this crown off. And, if not, then I'll need you to bail me out. And she, so she came in and bailed me out, and she took off the crown. And, that wasn't a great feeling.
What she did different than you?
Yeah, I did. And, but I think from her perspective, she said it was like one of the thickest PFMs she's ever seen.
Sure.
So she said it was also very challenging for her, and that made me feel better. But at the same time, she bailed me out completely. And it's not a big deal, but like, it really shook me. And it was like that and a few other things like that where you're just not 100% confident in yourself, that I didn't realize how much that would affect me as the way I am and I'm wired. You know what I mean? Where I feel like I have to be in control and I have to know all the answers and I have to, I rely on my confidence a lot. And it's kind of hard to have confidence in yourself as a dentist when you can't take off a crown. You know what I mean?
No, totally. And it's like the timing of things like that, where it's like, right as you're kind of new at this practice and it's a few days in, and it's just like you want the team to trust you, you want the patients to trust you, you want yourself to like have that confidence, and then you get like a dentistry curveball, which are always going to come, but it's like a new one that you haven't run into before without the tools that you're used to.
And I think it's just a matter of, being able to clinically try your best all the time and live with the results. I think it's tough to, it's tough to expect a lot from yourself all the time. Yeah. And I think just that, that part of being a dentist, I don't think I was properly prepared for, to not bring your clinical stuff home with you and, that type of stuff. And so I think for me, what really helped, and I'm more talking about this for any other new grads out there listening that are most likely going through the same thing. I feel like what really helped me is adopting a new mindset of continuous growth, where, I'm not supposed to have arrived anywhere. It's more of a progression in my career and, using your bad experiences as learning opportunities and trying to always learn something from every experience that doesn't go 100% as planned. And then you use your confidence builders as confidence builders, so that, I think that really helped me out. And now I've kind of been making it my mission to not have the same problem twice. And, now I have a new way of taking off crowns. You know what I mean? So it's, it's just a matter of, I think, using those experiences and trying to adopt that mindset of challenging yourself. And I guess I didn't realize how challenging everything would be for me.
No, totally. And thank you for kind of sharing that and being honest about that. And I know sometimes as show hosts, we want to present ourselves as knowing what we're doing, but I think people actually appreciate when we recognize that, like, dentistry sucks sometimes, and it sucks at the worst times possible. It's like when you need to be done with this procedure by a certain time, or when you're new, or whatever it is, it's always going to be doing that. And I think I love what you said, the not make the same mistake twice. Like that's essentially dentistry, is just there's always going to be something new that we never expected and we've never seen, and then learning from each one and taking it step at a time.
Yeah, and I think from the perspective of, in terms of like production, it's funny because, for a year or however long I've been on the show, I keep getting emails, man, you're going to kill it when you get out. And it's funny because, like, I see why people would say that, but like when you're actually in the situation of somebody who's supposed to be killing it, and, at this point, we've been there for about a month. We've pretty much maintained exactly what they've been doing.
Sure.
So for me, that was kind of a good feeling, just maintaining what they're doing. But I feel like what we're really, what I feel like we're making a lot of strides in is we went into the practice with a very clear idea of our vision, both personally and for the practice itself. And so I feel like there's, we've spent a lot of time talking to the staff and interacting with them. And I feel like we're making a shift and laying a foundation for what will be our practice vision. And so I feel I'm excited about that. I feel like I'm making a lot of progress in those areas, like really quickly, like way faster than I expected. Nice. But that's never going to show up at the bottom line. You know what I mean? So like you're not doubling or, doing 20% more. You're just kind of putting things in place that will be, very fruitful down the road.
I just want to clarify that you're a little bit disappointed that your first month out of dental school, you're only producing as much as the previous dentist who's been there for 30 years.
Well, I mean,
I'm just kidding. I just think it's awesome that you guys are able to like step in and match what they were doing before, like that there wasn't an immediate dip in production and in the practice. And the fact that you're able to maintain the status quo, even though, everyone's like, oh, you're going to kill it. And Derek Williams is out there, within a year, maybe you can grow and change and do these things. But I think that's great for your first month.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I agree with you. It's obviously good that we haven't dipped. But at the same time, I think I don't know. I think that there's opportunity to be had. And so I'm excited to, get it. But at the same time, I think it's more important for me to, put things in place that'll be beneficial down the road long term, as opposed to just trying to have a good short term month, whatever.
Okay. Yeah, no, and I just wanted to make sure. I just think that's awesome. I think that's something to be excited about, and it's just funny that you have so much confidence and high standards for yourself that you're like, dang it, we didn't grow production my first month in practice. I'm just making fun of you. It's
great. I genuinely think that, so it's kind of hard for me to make fun of myself.
I know, it's awesome.
I don't know.
A word from our sponsor, Q Optics. One of the things that surprised me since Q Optics has sponsored our podcast is how many other people I've found that are already using Q Optics loops. Ironically, at my workplace, after a couple episodes, I looked around and I realized that 3 or 4 of the different doctors I already knew already had their loops. I asked them about it and they all loved them. They've all had similar stories of, I was forced to use this company in dental school, switched to these, I've loved them ever since. It's been a consistent pattern. So my challenge to you is if you're in a group setting, if you're in an area where you're working with other doctors and you see there's other loops lying around, take a peek. See if anyone's already using Q Optics. That way you can try them on, you can ask them their opinion, you can see if they think it's worth it. I think you'll be surprised by how many people are already using Q Optics that you know. If you can't decide if you'd rather have the 3.5X or the 4.5, schedule a no-pressure look at their product line by emailing sales@qoptics.com. Use the promo code SP16 for $100 off a pair of loops or $300 off a pair of loops and light combo. Q Optics, let's have a better look.
So no, but I'm hoping to, give the audience maybe a realistic view of what it's been like for me. Derek, I haven't gone back and listened to that first episode you did with Derek, but I've talked to Justin and Derek like all the time lately about things, and they keep mentioning how it's just gonna suck, your first month or whatever. Derek had a really tough first 2 months is what he told me, and it's really tough because he was all by himself in the middle of nowhere, and he was, I don't want to say the middle of nowhere, he was in Lufkin, Texas, but he was
Lufkin's the middle of nowhere. I would we were in Houston. I was like, man, maybe I'm close to Derek. We went to Houston for like a little family trip a couple months ago. And I was like, maybe we can just like swing by Derek's. I'm like, oh, that's like a 2-hour detour. And like, we had to be back. And I was like, never mind. That guy lives in the middle of nowhere.
Anyways, but he was in a brand new place is what I meant. He was in a brand new place and he was all by himself, and same with his buddy Steve. And I feel like, I feel very fortunate that, maybe my miserable time is hopefully, kind of, I don't know, it's kind of ups and downs, but, like Derek talks about not being able to eat and losing like 20 pounds. And, I understand that because like for the first solid couple weeks.
You were hoping to be on that diet. You were looking forward to that.
No, I lost like 10 pounds.
Did you?
Yeah, in 2 weeks.
It's a real thing.
Yeah, it's bad because you can't eat.
New practice owner diet.
No, I was nervous and like, I was anxious before every day I'd have to go in and, I wasn't eating very much. It's like pretty much just like one kind of meal, maybe a day if I could. But like, you're just nervous. And
I think we need to make a chapter in the Ownership Accelerator about that, about the weight you're going to lose as a new owner. This is just another benefit of practice ownership.
But the thing is, and
I'm sorry,
I think it's more stressful being a new dentist than it is being a new owner. And okay. maybe I can't, I don't know, but I feel like if you're walking into a practice that kind of runs the way it should, and you bought the right practice, and that's a point I'm not making right now that I want to get to in a second, but I feel like for me, almost all of my stress is coming from the fact that I'm a new dentist. I don't think and I think Derek would agree with me there.
And you've got so much planned and so much confidence around the ownership side that it makes sense that that's not the stressful part for you. Whereas for maybe some of our listeners who, sure, they've listened to podcasts and done some things, like maybe they're not as confident with the numbers and the management and directing people and knowing where to go with the ownership side of things. So it seems like you need it to do what you're doing and do straight out of dental school into some sort of ownership situation. Like you need to have some dose of both confidences of clinical and ownership, management, business type confidence. Otherwise, that's where it's the recommendation comes into like, maybe you should just get a little bit under your belt, like ease into it, do an associateship first. Because even if you have both of those confidences, you're still going to get rocked in all sorts of ways that you didn't expect.
Yeah. And, I want to stress something. I haven't done it yet. So nobody's seen my financials for the practice, obviously. But I can tell you that I think the big reason why I'm not as stressed as I could be is because I feel like we bought the right practice for us. So this practice, it was kind of just about as big as we would be able to finance without being too big. We were worried when we initially saw a 2-doctor practice as our number one choice, that it would be a little bit too large to, for us to purchase, especially when we wanted to purchase. But this one was just kind of right at that right level, between 1 and 1.5 million, kind of in that area. But 40% of the production comes from hygiene, about 40% of it, a little bit less.
Nice.
And then you have a senior associate doing, the remaining, by the time the hygienists and the, our seller produce, we're about our living expenses past break even, including our practice notes. So, before we ever touch a handpiece, we've paid our living expenses and we've paid our practice note, we've paid our rent, we've paid all of our expenses, we paid our staff. And then, now we can produce.
That's awesome.
And so I think as a new grad, that was a very attractive situation for me because I know that if I don't touch a handpiece, that's fine. I'm still paying my living expenses, both my wife and I. So
that's huge. That's awesome. Especially with, and if you're not comfortable sharing this, that's totally fine because my wife gets mad at me for oversharing financial stuff. And that's very reasonable for her to get mad about that. How much total debt would this bring you to? Like, it doesn't have to be exact or ballpark, or even if you don't feel comfortable, but you've got your private dental student loans, your wife's private dental student loans, a house, and now a practice. Like ballpark, where is that putting you?
So no house yet. We've made the decision to rent for a while because of because of our debt situation. So yeah, I think everybody can. I'll walk everyone through the basic math without sharing too much. So we both went to private dental school, so you can kind of imagine what private dental school would cost. And then we bought a practice in Phoenix, doing between 1 to 1.5 million. So if you add that up, we're circa 2 million, less than 2 million, but we're close.
Wow.
Yeah.
So to have the degree of confidence that you have right now with your financial situation, despite all of the ups and downs of kind of where your day-to-day job is, that's mind-blowing. Like, that's the impact of buying the right practice, is that you have an engine that can pay for, almost $2 million worth of debt without you picking up a handpiece. Whereas if you were an associate and everything has to be produced by you, it's like you have to, every crown, every filling, everything that you cut is what pays your student loans and your bills and all of that. So the financial confidence that you have in the situation that you have right now is because you bought the right practice. And it's incredible that you found it and that it worked out and that you're moving forward with it and it's all kind of playing out how you expected it to.
Yeah, but I think I want to add a caveat to that. I don't want people to think that I'm like, rolling in the dough. So I think income-wise,
you're not rolling in the dough. You're $2 million in debt.
Perfect. So I'm glad we have that established. But also, so income-wise, I think if my wife and I were to go get traditional associateships and we were to be on the higher end of being paid, we were busy, we were doing well, I think we would make about the same as we will if we just keep things where they're at right now. Sure. But this way, we're working between my wife and I combined 5.5 days a week. So we're not working very much. I'm working 3 days, she's working 2.5. And for us, that was why, I think that was the biggest why we did it this way, was for us to have the ability to not have a huge, work schedule.
Yeah.
Have a lot of life-work balance and then make a comparable income to if we were to, work 5 days a week as associates.
No, that's huge. So with all of this, looking back, you did a lot of things right. I think we have seen that on the podcast, and we've kind of been with you on this journey. But what do you wish, if anything, you had done differently, or what surprised you?
I think I was surprised at how difficult it would be for me to buy a practice out of school. I think I didn't realize how difficult it would. I didn't realize how much it would cost me. First of all,
okay.
It's people probably think that I'm being like ridiculous in saying that because I talk about how much it costs people. But I mean, so we talk in the accelerator legal fees being $7 to $12 grand. As kind of what you can expect. I eclipsed the $12 grand pretty easily. Okay. So yeah, we had an, and it was obviously, we had a more complex deal. There's a lot of moving parts to it. But yeah, I mean, legal fees, I was, that was, and I just talked at the beginning of the episode about how much I love my lawyer. It wasn't his fault. I mean, it just costed what it costed. And, it was a long process, a lot of going back and forth and a lot of contracts. I think I signed like 7 contracts. Wow. So, there was a lot involved, and, I think our total agreements are like 150 plus pages, so it's a lot of stuff that we had done, but also, the financing component and the, I did not anticipate how much uncertainty there was around that. And I felt like I had a very solid grasp of how possible it was. But to actually execute it, was more challenging than I had anticipated. So I remember, like now I feel very happy that, I'm out of it, and, assuming, I mean, there's nothing left on our closing checklist, assuming everything goes smoothly, when this episode's released, I'm a practice owner. But yeah, I don't think I anticipated how difficult it would be to get to that spot. But now that I'm here, I feel very thankful that I'm, cutting a year or two out of my, career. I'll be put in a period where it's a lot more difficult, but then, coming out of it a year from now, I'll be very thankful that I did this. That's kind of the way I'm approaching it. But yeah, I think, I did not anticipate how challenging that would be, for sure.
Yeah. Well, and it's one thing to talk to people on the podcast. It's one thing to, understand all the moving parts and living through it, and the stomach lining and the lost sleep are a whole different thing.
Yeah. And, it's like, if I had 1 year's experience, it would have gone like so much smoother. I wouldn't have been like, just everything would have just fallen into place a lot easier, I think, because of the complications that were added because we were new dentists. Put, that in the deal. And then, I think it just made the deal a lot harder to execute. So, that was just part of it. And
was it hard? Like, cause we talked with David Alvey and the people that we've dealt with understand new grads and practices. Was it the size of your practice that was the issue for a new grad, or what was the hang up?
Yeah, it was trying to buy a practice north of $1 million, as a new grad. Yeah. That was probably the biggest thing. And it's just, you can convince them as much as you want, that you're able to, do it, and I showed them ADA studies, and I showed, but it's just a matter of being until they know for 100% certainty that you can go into that practice and produce this much, they won't, I think they're very stubborn on that point. But that's why the seller carry was essential, because that's what got it done. But there was a point in the negotiations where they were refusing. So their counsel was very adamant on not wanting that seller carry. And so we pushed to try and get it financed without the carry. And that was the big roadblock, was being told no on that, and then being told a final amount, that the minimum that they had to carry, and then getting them to agree to that. I think that was a very big point. But again, without the relationship with the seller, that would have never been done.
Well, and one of those dominoes falls wrong, and the rest of them, you're kind of done.
Yeah. But it's awkward. I got to say, there's a few things that are really awkward about this. So we met them, and a year and a month or so later, we started negotiating. So we had like this big in-between period where we really just focused on building our relationship with them. We talked to them periodically. It was a very healthy situation. And then both of our lawyers, so I didn't know their lawyer told them not to contact us, but our lawyer told us to contact them. And then, like very recently we kind of talked about it, like we kind of both complained about the whole process to each other. And then I found out that they also were instructed not to talk to us. So we had been going under regular communication for north of a year. And then for about 4 months, no contact whatsoever. And It's kind of awkward when you're, arguing with them and, it's like you guys are arguing about things and you're like, is this coming from them? Is this not? And, it just kind of questions your relationship a little bit. And then to get out on the other side of it and then to kind of just like, okay, that was terrible. We went through it together. Now let's move on. But It's just awkward. It's very awkward. That period of not talking to them and wondering why exactly are we not talking? Is it because their lawyer told them also, or is it because that they're, maybe have changed their mind, or, you know what I mean? It's just, a
lot of question marks.
Yeah. And then to get on a podcast and share your plans with 5,000 people. And if they don't go well, then, that's not.
It's a real thing. There's been a couple podcasts I've listened to where there's been like a female co-host or a co-host who, like, she had a baby and then the very late term had a miscarriage. And it was like this awful thing. And I'm sure she was still getting emails for a long while after, like talking about the baby, all these things. So it's sensitive to share these big life moments in a public way. So it's cool that it's working out.
Yeah, I'm happy that I would not have to come on here and explain why it didn't happen. And, like that would really be terrible. And so I'm really happy that I don't have to do that. But
yeah,
I think throughout the time, it was a real possibility that I was kind of dreading. But, luckily that, as of now, assuming this episode ever gets released, then it didn't, it didn't happen. So, yeah.
Nice. No, and for me, my big thing was in the residency was we technically weren't supposed to have outside employment. So the whole time I was starting this podcast in the residency, I'm like, no, this is my wife's business. And we're, if she makes money from it, that's her deal. But, I'm just showing up and recording episodes. But now that the residency is over, it's nice to be able to just kind of relax and not worry as much what is kind of said and what people perceive. So I think it's kind of a similar feeling for both of us.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And but moving forward, I am excited. I think, I haven't talked a lot about the guys at Lifestyle Practice, but I feel like Justin and Derek have been really big for us. I think for me, especially working with them, they're very practical. And I think I have a hard time. Sometimes I get in the weeds a bit and there's stuff that like I'm really excited about, like implementing that like in reality is probably not a very big, game changer.
Sure.
But
like little optimizations that could be better, but
yeah, but it's like not a big deal. But like when you're in the practice every day, you're like thinking about how much that thing annoys you, and then and so to have them tell me like, no, this is where you should be focusing, and like having that check in has been big, and I feel like my mindset is pretty good right now, and I think that's probably the most important thing. So yeah, I'm feeling excited, and I think it'll be fun. I'm really, really excited to get to, slowly but surely make it, something that I'm really proud of.
That's awesome. I want to go back to that last point about working with the Lifestyle Practice guys and working with Justin. And the one thing that comes to my mind is I've been listening to all these running podcasts, and it's these two coaches, and the job of a coach a lot of times is to rein people back, because you can and you're willing to and you're excited to go do this and run harder and push yourself, and then you injure yourself or you lose sight, or now that you're injured you can't run for 3, 4, or 5 weeks, and now you've kind of blown that season. So it's kind of pretty similar to what they're doing for you, in the fact that they're saying, okay, let's focus on the most crucial, essential things that are going to deliver value and going to improve the practice, and not worry about this, that, and the other, and kind of hold you back in some ways. And so it's kind of cool to see that the coaching aspect of that applies across disciplines.
Well, yeah. And, I think the perspective, being, upset that we haven't,
give us an example. What's like is it like assisted hygiene or like scheduling,
one
or
thing
like what are some of the things that you're excited about that you can't implement yet and they're driving you nuts?
So scheduling is driving me nuts. Oh my goodness.
Okay.
So they schedule out of one chair. They see patients out of one chair, and I mean, it just
How many chairs do they have?
8. And
okay,
I'm seeing patients in 1 chair, and but they've been scheduling like that for the last 30 years, and they've been
Sure.
doing just fine, and so it's like, but so I'm sending my office manager and maybe my front desk to Breakaway's office manager course.
Nice.
So by the time this is released, they'll be there in 3 weeks, and
Cool.
that's something I'm really excited about. And that was one of the things that I was really excited that kind of happened quickly, is the office manager had shown a lot of eagerness to kind of learn, and maybe like she wants to have a bigger role, and so I kind of got her on board. So I'm excited about that, and I feel like that's really big. So after we get back from that, my goal is to switch to provider time scheduling. But then like there's stuff I want to do with the hygiene schedule that like is a little minutia stuff.
Sure.
And, actually, so right now they see patients every 50 minutes. And one thing that we talked about is, maybe even making that an hour, so going the other way, so that you can have more time to focus on case acceptance in those with the hygienists, and, do more things around that, because ultimately that's way more important than doing an extra prophy every day. And so I think, having that perspective is different than my initial inkling of making hygiene appointments 40 minutes. I would never do that, but I'm just saying, like, my mindset was making hygiene more efficient versus making hygiene more productive. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it kind of, you can get so focused in on what their production numbers are, and then we lose sight of, okay, the things that happen in the hygiene chair directly impact whether the patient ends up doing X, Y, and Z procedure today or in the future, and losing sight of kind of the other production that can come from there. So that's a great perspective.
Yeah, and I think they've really helped me out with that. But then also the perspective that they have. Like Derek was doing the exact same thing 2 years ago, and he knows that it gets better. You know what I mean? So having somebody like him kind of give you just like, just keep putting one foot in front of the other, keep going, and just knowing that it'll get better. And then having, a guy like, Justin, who's obviously accomplished a whole lot, tell me that it's okay to be where you're at right now because you are establishing things, the foundation for where you want to be tomorrow. And I think that's, having that mindset has been very healthy for me, to really just focus on building the foundation and having a plan to change the things you don't like, but being okay with where you're at. And so they've been huge for me, especially because, I think I need what they offer a lot. And so it's, I think Justin's just, I think they're both just so, like, they have such high goals and they accomplish such high things that they know the right mindset and the right things, that you need to be adopting and you need to be thinking about to get them done. Yeah. And, working with them, it's very obvious why they are as successful as they are. And I think people hear the numbers that they do and, their overhead and their lifestyle, and they're like, that's not possible, or they're, doing full mouth rehab, but it's when you really get to know them and you get to know their philosophy and whatnot, it just makes sense. I think they're just really driven people, and it's been really, really great experience. I wanted to take a minute to talk about the sponsor for today's episode, Lendeavor. Lendeavor is the modern lender to dental practices. With innovative software, exceptional service, and decades of combined experience in dental practice lending, Lendeavor is reshaping the experience of getting a practice loan. Practice owners are some of our economy's most highly trained and hardest working entrepreneurs. Yet, financing a practice takes too long and costs too much. Lendeavor is a team of credit experts, software engineers, computer scientists, financiers, lawyers, and academics that have come together to deliver market-leading rates, speed, and convenience. They've built software that takes complicated transactions, like buying your first practice, and makes them simple. As a result, you spend less time applying for your loan, and they spend less time processing it. This efficiency means faster funding and lower rates for you. Whether you're acquiring your first practice, remodeling, or expanding your existing practice, buying commercial real estate, or even updating equipment, take the first step today by pre-qualifying online in minutes. I'll leave a link in the show notes. Lendeavor's online pre-qualification is safe, secure, and seamless, and pre-qualifying with Lendeavor will never affect your credit score. Click the link in the show notes or send an email to info@lendeavor.com to learn more. Financing made or arranged pursuant to California Financing Law, license number 60DBO53100.
That's awesome. I love that Derek has moved into this type of coaching, because like for you, I mean, you literally couldn't have a more direct example of like someone who did break away and someone who, you know, created the Dental Town group, the ambitious dental students, and, you know, knew and understood and did such a rapid transition straight out of dental school. And for then to have him and Justin to turn around and guide you, I think that's awesome. I think a lot of people would be resistant to wanting to pay for coaching this early and have people like that guiding that. But I think this is when it's the most essential, is when you can feel so alone and not have perspective that you want to have these people in your corner.
Oh yeah, and I think, again, you know, I think going back to Derek's situation, it really made me realize how much support I need. And so I feel like I've built in a lot of support from a lot of different sources, them included. And yeah, I mean, I'm excited, but I also feel like, you know, they offer, you know, a lot of, they'll push you more than I'm making it sound like, you know, but at the same time, they have that like perspective of knowing that it's okay and accepting where you're at.
That's awesome. I'm just so stoked that things are working out for you, and it's all coming to fruition like you planned. Maybe we'll have to do an update once you've closed and once you're like the official owner and have to start making these decisions and deciding what to implement first. Maybe we can do an update in like a month or two.
Yeah, and you know, I think I will try to talk about it, you know, maybe kind of continuously, maybe not even like have a full episode, but just kind of as we go through.
Intros and outros, yeah.
Yeah, I'll try being more honest and more forward when I can. But, you know, I think the thing that I'm really excited about, and I think that what maybe other people may not fully get from this episode, is for our situation, we bought the right practice for us. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And if I was 2 years out of school or a year out of school, this would no longer be the right practice. You know, it would be something else. So I think it's a very, I think the practice that somebody buys is a very important decision, probably the most important decision. But then after you're done, you kind of just move on to ownership. But, you know, getting that right will make ownership a much different experience either way. And I think that if I were to buy a practice like this and not have the seller stay on, for example, or not have as productive a hygiene department, or not have as low overhead as we have, then all of a sudden I'm really stressed, and I'm not having the same mindset I'm having now, where I'm more focused on growth and, you know, focusing on laying the foundation. I'm more focused on, you know, paying the bills, which, you know, right now it's a concern, but it's not the main concern.
Absolutely. Well, cool. Well, this was awesome. I'm really excited we kind of captured this as soon as we could to get your early perspective on ownership, and we'll see how as it proceeds. I think we're going to have a lot of little lessons to learn, and I think our audience is going to be excited to see your understanding and your.
Can I cut off your ending real quick?
Yeah.
2 more stories I wanted to share. I didn't realize, and for those people who are listening who have bought a practice, they probably know this. Meeting the staff is way more nerve-wracking than I would have ever anticipated. I think there are very few situations that like kind of rocked me a little bit. Meeting the staff was one of them for sure. And, you know, it just kind of made me lose my confidence for a second. It was like, you know, and every time, you know, that happens, it's funny because Justin always tells me, he's like, you know, I really like that you're losing your confidence and you're feeling like, he's like, you know, it kind of reminds me that you're human. And he kind of, you know, he feels like it's so healthy for me to like lose my confidence and like have these humbling moments, but I don't like it in the moment, you know. So it's like, it's kind of annoying that he like talks about how great it is that I'm feeling this way. But
that makes me happy.
You know, but it is, you know, but there are a few moments that kind of rocked me like that, and I didn't anticipate meeting the staff being one of them. But it's just kind of weird looking at people that, you know, I don't know, it just freaked me out. You know, but it was short term, but it didn't feel short term in the moment. And I think for anyone out there, you know, there are going to be times like that. I mean, gosh, I did not anticipate how many times I would feel like, wow, I don't have my confidence right now. And I feel like the only thing that made me feel better is being okay not having confidence in that moment. And that was a hard thing for me to learn to do. And I don't think I'm fully there, but, you know, I feel like I've made some steps in the right direction.
Yeah, that's I mean, my residency was 2 years of my legs being chopped out from underneath me, so I'm used to losing my confidence. So it's easy for some of us, but for people like you, it's takes a little bit more sometimes.
No, and I don't think this podcast helped, to be honest. I think my experience over the past year plus here at Shared Practices, maybe made me rely on my confidence a little bit more, maybe gave me more confidence, and so yeah, I probably have maybe a unique issue. But I don't think it's that unique for somebody if you're going to graduate and buy a practice out of school, you probably have a lot of confidence. And, so yeah, I mean, just anticipate that situation. It's not fun.
Cool. Well, it's part of the fun, part of the ups and downs.
Yeah, no. And I'm excited. Again, I'm really excited, and I'm happy I'm on talking about it finally. And hopefully we talk about it more.
Cool. Well, I'll let you wrap us up because you've been doing everything for like the last forever. So I don't want to steal that from you yet.
Yeah, we're gonna have to go back. We have this thing where Richard has to say the last word in every episode. But
you can do it. I can stay quiet. I promise.
All right. Here we go. Wrapping up the episode today. Thanks for listening, everyone, and we'll see you next week on the Shared Practices podcast.